2017 with PlayStation and the idea that, hey, VR is nowhere near where it should be. It's not even close to competing where it should be competing. I'm just gonna be real with you on that, okay? The Pro isn't competing on the level it should be competing on. Excuse me. That's facts. Okay? The Pro cannot compete with the X. It will never be able to, and it just won't ever compete on that level, even if you want it to. PlayStation is, yes, ahead of the fucking Xbox brand. That's fact, too. Yes, PlayStation overall sales are definitely ahead. Yes, that I won't deny. But should they be slowing down the way they are? Should they legitimately be like teetering off? No. But they are teetering off. You can be like, that's not true. Yes, it is. I want you to remember, they legitimately withdrew 20 million units from their projected sales. At one point, they withdrew 20 million. Not because of anything, but because, I mean, obviously, they knew as a company they were fixing to just sit back and do nothing but have a circle jerk meeting in the office. I mean, look at this past physical year. What have they done to push PS4 Pro? What have they done to encourage developers to make games stick out for the PS4 Pro? Absolutely jack shit. What have they done for their first party games? I don't think over 60% of their first party games even are required to be PS4 Pro enhanced. Okay, a lot of them are not. Making the PS4 Pro kind of a piece of shit and useless. Unless you, in fact, go and buy PSVR, which then in turn makes the PS4 Pro an add-on for another add-on. What's the point of that? I thought the PSVR was supposed to be the cheaper alternative for VR overall. Am I wrong for thinking that? Because I feel like I'm wrong for thinking that, but that's what they told us in the beginning. Hey, this is a cheaper way for VR, and we're going to have like over 80 games in our first physical year. Yet within their first physical year, the system failed to even restock shelves at all within the first, what, 3 months? What, it came out last, what, October? And after its initial launch, it didn't see a decent restock until after Resident Evil 7 was out, which PlayStation at E3 and the PlayStation Experience came out and said, hey man, Resident Evil 7 is going to be playable on VR. Using it as a selling point, but they didn't restock it for the game? Hurting not only the sales of the game, but hurting sales of VR in general? Am I the only one who thinks that? Because here we are, after it's been a year for VR on PlayStation's end, and they're just now getting basic first-person perspective games on their VR headset, and not just like basic in the term of, you know, who gives a damn games. I'm talking basic games that people probably thought should have been there to launch the damn system with, like Doom, Skyrim, making VR compete with Nintendo Switch, which unfortunately VR just can't compete. It's not gonna be any competition, and I don't mean that when it comes to, well, the Switch is the Switch and the VR is the VR and the VR is more powerful, yada yada yada. That's not what I mean. I mean, it comes down to Nintendo dominates it because Nintendo has outsold in numbers what the PSVR has. And it's been out longer. PSVR is sitting at a lower sales number than the Switch right now in sales. And the Switch has been out less time. Think about that. The Switch has outsold the PSVR in less time. And the Switch is actually more convenient of a system and has, from what I can see, better third-party support with better games. From what I can see, and I've been to Walmart and looked at the PSVR games because they separate the games. Unlike when you go to a GameStop where all PlayStation games are, kind of crumpled together, kind of like what PlayStation does with their numbers, they just kind of crumple them together. And I've said this before, yeah, sure, sitting at 70 million sounds good until you start breaking the pieces apart and seeing what the numbers truly are. And then you're like, that's actually not that fucking impressive. You know what I mean? 70 million sounds great. But you're piecing in the 2013's PS4 with the PS4 Slim and the PS4 Pro to get that compressed number of 70 million. So yes, 70 million is a great feat. But when you realize you're compressing it with every one of those systems, you have to realize the biggest part of that 70 million came from the 2013 version. The biggest part. And 2016 is when the PS4 Pro and the PS4 Slim launched at the very end of 2016. And there were already over 50 million of that model in everyone's home and sold. So what does that tell you? About 10 million of each if you're giving a number generously to each console? That's not good. That in fact is very bad. Okay? And that means you're getting 20 there. You see what I'm saying? That's how you get that. And then the VR headset makes up the change because VR headset sits at below 5 million. See how I did that? That's how you do that when you break it away. That's why I'm saying Pro isn't doing good. Slim isn't doing impressive. VR isn't doing impressive. Sony's numbers have slowed way down. And the only one to be faulted here is Sony. It's got nothing to do with the fan base. Absolutely nothing at all. Sony has had a year to get this shit right. They've had a year to pound the pavement, to get on their grind, get beast mode going, but they sat back and they just sat there. Sony has the most hardware on the market right now. I've said it before, I will say it again. Sony, you are your own worst enemy. How the hell you have a PS4, a PS4 Pro, a PS4 Slim, a VR headset, and a Vita all available at the same one fucking time? Yes, Vitas are kind of gone now, but at that time they were all available. So you still have 4 fucking products available. Nobody else has that many. Nintendo has 3. You have 4, Nintendo has 3, now they have 2 because Wii U's are not regularly available anymore. I went to Walmart the other night and I didn't see a Wii U, I saw a Nintendo Switch. So if Walmart's not selling them, Target's not selling them, and Best Buy's not selling them, that means the only place that is GameStop, and that's used. So think about that. You can buy a Wii U in the used market or off eBay, but you're not going to be getting that bitch brand new unless you're buying from a reseller. So Nintendo has stopped production of that. Okay? Xbox sells Xbox Ones. PlayStation, you're the only one with way too many consoles on the market. Xbox has Xbox One. They've stopped. They quit. They even went as far as to quit the VCR model at Xbox. So now you have the Slim model and the Xbox One X. But this is still in the same family of the same one generation. You got 2 iterations of the same one generation, so it's basically you're buying one iteration of one generation. Get what I'm saying there? PlayStation is its own worst enemy here. You have a PlayStation 4, which they did stop for the Slim that nobody asked them for, but PlayStation 4 Slim, you have the PlayStation 4 Pro, you have the VR headset. That's 3 items. If you take away the Vita, which you can still technically find a Vita every so often. So Vita is still technically on the market because you can still find Vita games every so often. I've come across Vita games at Target, come across them at Walmart. I've even come across a Vita at a Walmart and a Target before. So you could still find Vitas making 4 items out of 5. Okay? That's the most any company has. Making your job so much harder than Nintendo's or fucking Microsoft's. And you've got to support all these. And the fact you don't, and you're just out there like, well, if we compress all these, man, these numbers look incredible. They look so good. Compressed, yes, they look great, but you gotta realize only the world's dumbest fanboys compress those numbers. People like me don't do that. And I encourage other people to not compress Sony numbers because that's the only way they talk about their numbers is when they compress them because they want to impress their shareholders. Hey man, we're doing great. We've sold close to 100 million units. Of what? PlayStation. But don't you have 4 products under PlayStation? Well, we don't sell Vita no more. Then you have 3 products under PlayStation. 100 million? But isn't one of those from the base model 2013? Isn't majority of that number from that? So how many of the 3 products that came out in 2016 did you sell? Oh, no, we compressed this number. So how many have you sold in the past year? No, don't worry about that. You need to worry about the compressed number I just gave to you. Well, how many have you sold? I just told you we sold 70 million. You're not giving the actual numbers here. This is why they're not talking about PSVR. Notice they haven't come out with those numbers. There's a reason behind that. They're not doing good. And it's because, again, they're just sitting back, taking their cups of whatever drink they have after circle jerking in the fucking office with, whatever the fuck his name is. And that Andrew dude who's always on stage at E3. Fuck, that guy's stupid. And I swear to God, it's like, if you could get games out there people want to play and actually put them on the fucking thing instead of just showing us 2016's E3 and 2017. And you could get us God of War 4 like the month after E3. If you could get us, bigger titles than Knack 2. Which I'm not gonna dog Knack. I played Knack. I played through it here on this channel. But if you could get us bigger titles than that, if you could get us an actual physical release date and stick to it, I'm telling you, the numbers would not be falling off. PlayStation is falling off. If you don't want to believe it, like I said, take that compressed number and remember 2013's PlayStation 4 makes up over half of that. So take half of that out. And then you got to split that number because you got the Pro and you got the Slim. How well are they really doing? Because you got to be very generous, and the change of them two goes to VR. How well are they really doing? And since the Switch launched, when's the last time PlayStation really won a month? Really won a month. Not in just sales of the hardware, but sales of the software. Every month I turn around, I swear, Nintendo just had the Switch be the number 1 selling system. Nintendo just had their software be the number 1 selling software. every month. It's Nintendo's software or hardware is the number one selling product of the month. PlayStation, you have fallen off, and it's not anyone's problem or anyone else's fault but your own. And I'm not here to brag and boast about it because I like Nintendo or any of that. I'm saying this because I've said it over and over and over again. The only ones to blame are the same guys who have their heads up their ass, and that's the people over at Sony, because they don't know how to humble themselves when they start the train going the right way. And I'm going to leave you guys with this. Had Don Matrix not handed the keys to the kingdom to Sony at the start of this generation, would they be here right now? Think about that. Had Don Matrix, the guy who, I swear to God, had they not forced out of that position with, I'm going to guess, threatening to beat him within an inch of his life, had they not forced him to quit Microsoft, had he not handed the keys to the kingdom to Sony on his way out after that E3 presentation, or the Xbox One presentation, the fucking failure that introduced the world to Uncle Phil, had he not did that, would Sony be where they're at right now? Would they really? Think about where they were with the PS3. How long it took them to get the PS3 to catch up to the 360. The 360 was doing just fine. Even if the PS3 finally did catch up to them, the 360 was doing just fine on the way to this Xbox One. And then Don Matrix just gave it to Sony. He just handed it to him. So would they really be where they're at right now if Don Matrix didn't just go, hey, Sony, take the ball? Would they? I want to leave you with that, because I don't think they would. I don't think they would be where they're at had Don Matrix not just given the ball to Sony on his way out. I really don't. You can sit there and be like, oh, I think they would all you want to. But it took them the better part of a decade to catch a inferior system like the 360. Fuck the worst system, which was the Wii. They never caught that. So it took them the better part of a decade just to catch the 360, and they never caught the worst out of them, the Wii. Do you really think, had they not been handed the ball, they would have the position they had now? You really think that's the case? I don't think so. I think Sony is one lucky son of a bitch to be where they're at right now. But you're asking a guy who hasn't really had the greatest of relationships with Sony ever since they left the PS2 generation behind. Deuces.